March 18th, 2024, the evening of the vernal equinox. And we are live, Infinite Plane Radio, open phones for open minds. The number is 505 349 0420, and phones will be open momentarily. We are joined by the HBIC, Thirst for Truth. Others will be pouring in here. And we already have an audience listening on the Radio King, TuneIn, Paranormal Radio. So there's several dozen of you listening. And if you're just listening, you're not watching the video, the number again is 505 349 0420. The title of today's live stream is Bloodbath of Fake Bloodbaths. Because there's so many bloodbaths, it's actually a bloodbath of bloodbaths, just blood flowing everywhere. And of course today, figuratively speaking, you talk about something like this, it's figuratively speaking, but they mean it, when they say literally, they mean it figuratively as well. It gets kind of muddled here. Do we mean real blood, real fake blood? And the strange thing about this whole thing, if you ask me, is that we've been waiting for the storm, waiting for the draining of the swamp when they're going to kill the deep state. We're waiting for a bloodbath. Finally, Trump signals, hey, it's a bloodbath. And the nonners, who are normally reading into everything that he says, are like, no, actually, this time he doesn't mean bloodbath. That's not what he means this time. So we have a bit of a confusion as to when he's being literal, when he's being figurative. And it's also up to the media to decide, because they can just take things out of context. And this isn't new. We look at this laziness in media to take some comment out of context and build a story around it as though there are no consequences. And that's because that's how media has traditionally been. This ability for critics to criticize it real time and publish their criticisms and hold them accountable is relatively new. A lot of lefties have deleted their posts after overreacting to Trump's statement, which was really about cars being manufactured in China with Chinese labor and being imported through Mexico. He looks at this as somehow slighting Americans who aren't getting paid to create these cars. They're not getting those jobs. So he said he's going to put a tariff on it. And if we don't, it's going to be bad for the American worker. Quote, bloodbath, which is actually a term in finance. So the term bloodbath is not a literal slaughter. But then you have these pundits saying he's promising another January 6th. I'm sorry, but even January 6th was not a bloodbath. I mean, even if you believe it was more than just theater, all we really had was about a teaspoon of blood. That's all they squeezed out of the squib from Ashley Babbitt. I didn't see much more than that. All right, we have a few more rolling in here. Let's go. HLGGLH, G33, Frank Murr, Salty Siren, Armin Reed, Osher, P. Trippa says 7 days until eclipse season. Wonder if the bloodbath has something to do with the next full moon. Will it be red? Right. Right. Interesting point there. And again, we are really close to 4/8 when all of the internet prophets who have been saying this is the day are going to be either vindicated or blocked. If something doesn't happen, I'm going to say, hey, look, you can't use gematria calculators on headlines and put random words together until you get a hit and then claim you're onto something. But we're going to see. Now, the bloodbath statement, you could say it's stochastic violence, which you could make that argument, because even though he may know that it's in a certain context, he also knows, or at least the people who write his speeches would know, that this would be taken out of context, and this will be overreacted with, that people will have this response, and that the people like Justin Moan, you know, the guy who chopped off his dad's head, people like that would presumably say, okay, he wants literal blood. All right, so let's go through some of the notes here. A lot of people don't know about the, when we're looking at airplanes on the runway there, they have this auxiliary battery at the back of the plane. And I've seen these before, these videos where they're doing something with the auxiliary battery in the back. I'm not sure exactly what, but it appears to be emitting some kind of steam or smoke or exhaust. It's not that uncommon. But this, out of context, taken by Lauren Witzke, she says, behold, the fruits of a DEI-stricken flight industry. United Airlines, whose CEO dresses in drag, had an airplane that erupted in a smokeout of the tail. So Lauren Witzke often responds to this stuff without thinking first. She tweets first, thinks about it never. And this is not an unusual thing, but taken out of context, are saying, oh, this is because DEI. And I want to point out that's kind of a trap. A lot of people are falling into it, even Musk. They're all suggesting that DEI means they're going to lower standards, which isn't really the same thing. It may not be fair, it may not be meritocratic, yet it's not the same thing as saying it's going to reduce standards. It's kind of a false argument, but I see the right running with it. DEI has been a talking point for months and months and months. King Charles died after succumbing to prostate cancer at the age of 75, according to reports. And these reports were picked up by Russian media. So, according to Russian media and these other reports, King Charles is dead. And then, following this, King Charles declared alive after the Russian media shares fake death announcement. So, again, we're going into the royal bloodbath. Kate Middleton, dead. Taylor Swift, probably at the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle, until we find out otherwise. But you see what I'm pointing out here. These reports. Several Russian media outlets have reported King Charles III passed away from cancer complications based on a fake press statement attributed to Buckingham Palace. Now, I've often pointed out how people are trained, the general public is trained, to have maids, mind aids, no mental immune system. If it makes it to the screen, it makes it into their psyche because they believe it. There's no filter. Their eyes are just portals where the mass media can just download content into your brains. And this is how they want you. They don't want you to know something's BS. They don't want you to have a BS filter. They want you to believe everything, but this system will only work if they manage to shut out the competition who have alternate mind viruses. Going through some comments here. Garrett Summer says, are we talking about chemtrails? Chemtrails don't exist. G33 says Elizabeth Bathory. Yeah, Elizabeth Bathory, known for bloodbaths to preserve her youth. Sort of like Madonna was in a bloodbath. I think it was in 2020, shortly after the pandemic. Interesting name, Bloodbath, Elizabeth Bathory. Seems kind of world stagey. Yeah, joined by Elephant Tusks. Thank you for joining. All right, let's see what else we have here. Aries 1 says fossil fuel engine smoking. Well, I don't know exactly what that auxiliary battery does, but I've seen this happen frequently. And a lot of the chemdoozlers will manufacture evidence based on this. I want to point this out, that the mainstream media obviously manufactures lies all day long. But alt media, it's like do-it-yourself fake news. A lot of people in alt media make up their own fake news. This is from New York Post. Woke people more likely to be unhappy, anxious, and depressed, new study suggests. Right. I would say that anybody who is at the bottom of the MSM box, because the people who are woke, the people who are truthers, they're not out of the box. They're actually deeper into it. And this is what I call MSM plus. And the plus part of it are basically superstitions, fears, anxieties. Every red pill is a fear pill. And these are all meant to reinforce these superstitions and make them real, which they become real within your respective echo chambers. And this is what we were speaking of the other day, hyperstition. We live in a hyperstitious world, meaning superstitions that are real because not only are they believed, but the feedback loop reinforces belief in them. And they become real by default, and they get written into law, and we base our entire worldview based on these lies that have been inserted into our reality. Our reality's been augmented, but you would call these hyperstitions. Thank you, Echo Charlie. See, you got one of the copies there. We have a few copies of Autohoaxology 101 paperback available now. And after I sell this small handful, they're only going to be available through Amazon. Yeah, King TL says it's the best way to get the book, the Ko-Fi link. Yes. Yes, the Ko-Fi link, I'll ship those out in the morning, and I put it in the newsletter. And once this small handful is out there, and I'm mostly putting them out there for review purposes, but I'm hanging on to the box of books because I'm going to be distributing these in local events, book readings, etc. I'm at the phase where I need to start promoting it. And it's not like the book could become a bestseller, Auto Hoaxology 101. It's not mainstream. It's not for Normalville. It's not for Trutherville or Woketown. It's really something distinct, but it's something that's needed in order to codify what we're really about. So we can't be misrepresented by the media. Well, they'll say, oh, those people don't believe the news. They chop off the heads of FBI agents and call for insurrections and militias to rise up. No, that's not us. That's Trutherville. But anyway, we'll hear more about that book. And there's more going on with the book. In addition to the book and getting these ideas out there, I'm organizing these book readings in order to have debate take place on specific events or situations, contemporary myths. And a lot of people don't appreciate how debatable these things are. You have these big popular debates where the debate is God real? Is there any proof, etc.? But let's debate 9/11. Was that anything more than a movie superimposed over the news media and presented as real? I can make that case. And it's not something that people would consider debatable, like the existence of it as presented. Because the general way that conspiracy theorists talk about it, even people like Aaron Rodgers, is it happened, but we are fighting over who did it or how it was done. Direct energy weapons, tactical nukes, thermite, all kinds of MSM plus rabbit trails there to go down when you're trying to figure out who did it. But none of them ever ask the question, did it even happen? That's the level of skepticism that we're employing here. And I think it might have seemed extreme a few years ago, but now, after 10/7, if you're not auto hoaxing, you're not paying attention. It's pretty simple. All right, let's see here. Aries 1 says, I'd like to hear Tim's take on the Dead Sea Scroll calendar. Lately I've been taking an interest in prophecy, religious prophecy, and how it works. And what I would say is that it largely falls into the logical fallacy of the Texas sharpshooter, which has to do with you have a broad base of predictions. Like you can do this with, and famously, this fallacy is often referencing Nostradamus, because people can take Nostradamus, take his little quatrains, take all the alternate translations, and you could plug it in to right now, March 18th, 2024, and you could say, yeah, Nostradamus said this would happen. Oh, yeah, he predicted Trump. They used to say he predicted Hitler. Now they'll say he predicted Trump. You could easily make that case. My point is, there's no accountability. Like, I'm not making prophecies. I'm not saying something's going to end. I'm reading the zeitgeist. I'm reading the propaganda with full awareness of how integrated news media is with entertainment. We're not making guesses. We're making, I would say, we're presenting educated, informed opinions. We're reading the curve, as they called it in Leave the World Behind. And part of this is reading the stories they tell us. And a lot of it is storytelling. I call it contemporary myth making. The myth of the flood of Noah, has been repackaged and sold and presented, and they actually regulate our economies based on the belief in this modern iteration of Noah's flood. All right, moving on. Woke people being more anxious, unhappy, depressed. Yeah, obviously. And we know this. They're also triggered. They're mad at the other side. They feel like the world's going to end, that Trump is Hitler. But the red pillars are also unhappy, anxious, and a lot of them are actually falling off. I'm looking on Twitter. A lot of these hardcore truthers, digital soldiers, people have been faithfully retweeting Q drops for 8 years. A lot of them are kind of falling off there. In fact, there's another prophet. I never really listened to him, but I think he might be adjacent to someone like Zach Hubbard. He goes by the name The Illusion. The Illusion has quit sports decoding. So sports decoding is a big thing, and I haven't paid a lot of attention to it, but now that I'm looking at this sports decoding thing, I'm starting to suspect that this is also similar to using gematria calculators to predict when the next quote false flag is going to happen. It's a methodology for seeming to be on target with predictions, and that's the reason why I'm looking forward to 4.8. I'm not looking forward to the world ending. It's that after 4.8, all of these prophets who have staked their reputation on calling it as the day are going to be exposed as grifters, as phonies, or not. But here's what the illusion said. This is someone who has spent years and years here on online every day who can't really handle it anymore. He says, "Guys, I spoke with God today. Oh, God spoke with me today," he said. "I'll no longer be coding daily sports picks." That's nice. I see these videos of people getting thrown into the tracks on a subway and they get hit and they get killed. We see all this violence and sick stuff, and like, where's God? Well, God's over here talking to this YouTuber and saying, hey, you don't need to be doing daily sports picks, gematria predictions anymore. Anyway, he says, "I will not be coding daily games every single day. I have coded sports every day for 4 years. I am not the same person I once was." That last statement there really stood out to me. I am not the same person I was. Like, I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago, but I'm better off. I'm better informed. I'm calmer. I'm at peace. I've learned quite a bit. I've unlearned quite a lot more. But I'm not in a worse place than I was 4 years ago. I feel like 4 years ago, I was a much bigger dupe in multiple areas. So I'm not quitting anytime soon here. I don't have sore thumbs from doom scrolling 24/7. Anyway, another doom scroller bites the dust. Keith Olbermann suggests, quote, hope for Trump's assassination in an X post. Former MSNBC host Keith Olbermann appeared to hope Trump would be assassinated in his recent post. He says, Trump has been treated worse. Oh, Trump says he's been treated worse than Abraham Lincoln, who was assassinated. Now, Trump had compared himself to Abraham Lincoln. And I've noticed this Lincoln thing lately. There's been blood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, black smoke at the Lincoln Memorial. But this connection with Trump and Lincoln, Trump and JFK, it's a repeated theme. But anyway, this is more predictive programming. This is getting you ready for the inevitable. So when the psyop happens, you will say, oh yeah, this was obviously going to happen. They caused it. The media caused it with all this stochastic violence, stochastic terror, putting it out there. The point of it is, and this is why I've been harping on these various prophets, is they're predicting that this is going to happen for real. I'm stating that it's going to be fake as anything else they've ever faked. Salty Siren says lots of people calling for Trump assassination. Yes, Trump assassination is so hot right now. It used to be fringe, but there have been people talking about it for years and years. JL26, for example. Crisis vomiting. We talked about crisis shaking, 2021, 2022. A lot of people pretending they got the pokey, and then they shake on Instagram for clicks. Engagement bait, just pretend to be a victim. Crisis acting has kind of been decentralized. You don't have to work for the government to be a crisis actor. You just have to be on TikTok and be able to trick enough people. You can kind of break into the industry that way. Like independent media, not so much. Independent crisis acting, oh yeah, total thumbs up. Well, crisis shakers have come and gone. Nobody's shaking anymore. But now you have crisis vomiting. This is a new one. This is body cam footage shows Uvalde officers visibly distressed, sobbing and vomiting after entering Robb Elementary School, where 19 students were fake shot, as well as 2 teachers and 17 others fake injured but survived. I inserted the word fake there. Let me play this clip here. You'll be able to hear some crisis vomiting. Now, before I go much further, you see these officers in the back, they're outside, they're hugging. This is all designed to antagonize the right about cops and how they're all cowards. It's meant to antagonize the left to say AR-15s give too much firepower to civilians and the police aren't capable of handling the threat. These are bifurcated psyops. You can interpret them one way or the other. This was the event, Uvalde, where Alex Stain went and he cried for the fake dead kids and he yelled at the city council. And I tweeted him and I said, "Hey, Alex, fake dead kids' lives don't matter." And he blocked me because these conservatives love free speech so much. But, back to Uvalde, right after this event happened, I was going to watch FBI season finale. They canceled it. Why? Because the story in FBI, the season finale, was a school shooter was stopped by an FBI agent who went against protocol, didn't wait for a warrant, and stopped the kid. Meanwhile, in real life, Uvalde, the cops were too cowardly, according to the script, to go in and stop the shooting. They stood outside, they looked at their phones, they put on hand sanitizer, and they laughed while this thing was happening. This is how it was portrayed. Yet, in order to stop it, they had to rely on some outsider, a Border Patrol agent who was getting a haircut at the time. He heard there was a shooting, so he grabbed his shotgun, he ran to the school, and he fixed it. But this was the same story as FBI season finale. They canceled it. Then I was going to watch Stranger Things season 4, and it began with the scene with a bunch of dead kids. So the actual season started with a warning. It's like trigger warning. A bunch of kids just got shot, as you may have seen on the news, so you may not want to watch this first episode because it might be triggering. You see what they do? And they count on you not looking, but they can give you the imagery in entertainment. Like a lot of people think that Haiti is awash with cannibalism, that they're running around eating each other. And I haven't seen any convincing evidence of this. None. And you would think they'd be sharing this stuff on Instagram and terrorizing people, but where is it? I saw one video of a spit roasted corpse, and it was from Africa a year ago. It wasn't even Haiti. A new Ko-Fi shop sale from Tommy. Oh, you got the book. Awesome. Thank you. And by the way, the spit roasted corpse in Africa from a year ago was in front of a Halloween show, Halloween stores, like a prop. It was in front of a restaurant. So in front of a restaurant, they put this fake corpse for Halloween, and that somehow got thrown into the Haiti narrative. See, this is hyperstition. You have a closed system that provides feedback for whatever you throw into it. So you throw into this closed system a video clip of somebody eating a corpse or a corpse being cooked, and then it's already being talked about. So the people who think it's real, who are hearing the rumors, then see this, they share it, and it becomes real. And then people respond accordingly. But back to Uvalde. Here are the officers in the back, and I'm suggesting here that they aren't really vomiting, that they are faking it. This is crisis vomiting.
Nothing.
All right, you hear all that? Now, I have a bit of experience, not with mass shootings, but with decedent transport for the county morgue, state morgue, and in my experience, picking up bodies from even, multiple casualty scenes, car wrecks, whatever happens to be, I have never seen officers lose their composure, cry, vomit, even when you have a bloated corpse that's, face down in the kitchen, already exploded, everything's leaking out of it. I've never seen them act anything other than a little repulsed, or a lot of them exhibit gallows humor. In fact, I was really put off by a number of officers and people who worked in the morgue at the way they would joke at the scenes. I never felt that was appropriate. So this idea that these guys are out here crying and vomiting, no, this is just terrible acting. I didn't even hear a splash. Like, they're just making the noises for the camera. Totally fake. Let's see. Erica Creech says people that get into hidden messages and meanings can get lost in it. Yeah, you know what? Erica Creech brings up a great point here because we're talking about that individual who has quit the scene, and you can get lost in it. This notion of a prophecy about to come true and it doesn't match your guesses, what it happens to do, it's kind of paradoxical. It's like a contradiction because in one minute you put all your data points down, you're on target, you're right, it's going to happen on this day, and it doesn't happen. So instead of just saying, okay, I was wrong, I've been doing it wrong, something's not right, most people will say, okay, well, now it's more likely to be true the next prediction because it's going to happen eventually. They assume it's going to happen, and every loss or every failure to predict it to them is one step closer to it actually happening. I mean, this is the basis of Seventh-day Adventists and the great disappointment when Jesus didn't show up. They just waited again and again, and they just pushed the dates back. JFK didn't show up on 11/22/2021 at the place where he was assassinated. That didn't stop the JFK worshippers from expecting him to show up later. And it gets ridiculous, but this ties into the gambler's fallacy, where the idea happens, it's the same thing. You pull the lever, you lose. You pull the lever, you lose. But you keep doubling down. There's a lot of sunken cost thrown in here. There's so much emotional investment that you feel like it's going to pay off. So you just got to keep the faith. Keep losing, losing. Eventually it's going to win. And with the gambling thing, they're also addicted to the rush, the fantasy, the potential of winning, the potential of being right and telling everybody I did it. So there's this addictive quality to pulling that lever and knowing this might be it. But what I'm saying is that the people who get lost in these predictions, they're getting addicted. They're addicted to the thrill of a big win that's about to happen. I would even argue that the QAnon movement was largely a Ponzi scheme. You invest all your social capital, all your social media goes into this thing, and now all the people who aren't into it are going to see you as one of them. But you just keep throwing down, putting all your money in because eventually there's going to be an awakening and everybody's going to win and they're all going to come to you for answers. Of course, that hasn't worked out yet, has it? All right, let's move on here. G33 says barbecue was a cop. Yeah, the leader of the Haitian cannibal gangs, barbecue, was not only a cop, but there's a image of him where he's got a Masonic necklace. So he's a Freemason and a cop. And I was looking at the story at the same time as I was looking at the story of the 33-year-old Russian Satanist cannibal in Ukraine. And I was wondering, okay, well, I can understand Satanists eating people, but Freemasons? Freemason cops? Is there something we don't know at a higher level? Do they perhaps? But I was like, what is this? Cannibalism all over the world. Now it's bloodbaths everywhere. Okay, let's see what we have here. Oberman calling for an assassination. Yeah, more just, double standards as usual. One of the questions I'd asked last night, and I haven't uploaded the archive, I'll do that this evening. Last night, the live stream title was Kate Middleton is Dead and Taylor Swift is Headed to the Bermuda Triangle. But I had asked a question that was prompted by Les Luther. Do you wake people up? Do you go to Normieville and shake them? Do you pull people out of the matrix pods? Do you exit Plato's cave? And is there a moral dilemma? Like, is it incumbent upon you to help everybody else out? Mary Crux Smith said, answer to the question, no, you do not need to address the illusion of existence of a moral dilemma, referencing Plato's cave and the question of whether to stay in the cave while informing the cave dwellers that there is a cave. So when it comes to the cave dwellers, the people in the MSM box, do we owe them anything? A clue? Do we need to drop them hints? No, you don't need to disturb their sleep. They're enjoying it. Now, what Mary Crutch Smith says is that it's more or less pointless to do so and messy. She said, you do not need to address this. Those with eyes to see, those with ears to hear, as they say, will pop through. Inextricably drawn to question marks. Take care. Well, I appreciate them answering that question, and I've arrived at that some time ago. We don't have enough time anyway. I'm not proselytizing. We're not Moonies. We're not going to go door to door selling wind chimes. We're not Jehovah's Witnesses. We're not trying to get into people's heads here. We're only reaching those people who can receive the signal, eyes to see, ears to hear, not in the spiritual sense, but in the media savvy sense. Are you reality compromised because you have allowed the mass media to assume an authority it shouldn't have over your perceptions? And the answer for 99.999% is yes. They're all in that box. All right, let's see what we have here. Elephant Tusk says Trump seems to be playing two roles. What would that be? There's this widespread belief that Trump is actually two people, that he's twins, and that they're going to kill off one of the twins, which I think is ridiculous. A lot of politicians and celebrities don't have a consistent look when you compare them on TV to other images of them, and it kind of lends itself to this type of thinking. By the way, phones are open 505 349 0420. All right, we have another strange one here. I don't know what to make of this, but it has to do with the eclipse, so I'm going to play it. This is someone suggesting that America is Israel. And I knew this was coming somehow. I knew that the way that the white nationalist, and these are all feds, but the way they frame everything, America is almost like their version of Israel. It's a safe space for white nationalism. This is their um, chosen land. Even Glenn Beck used to say that God wrote the Constitution, or God's finger touched the Declaration of Independence. They worship these documents. He considered them to be scripture. But here, this is interesting here because this person is suggesting that the Bible is rewritten and the eclipse is going to reveal that we are in fact Israel, that America is Israel. Now, here's her thinking. She says that the eclipse is going through 7 Salems, which she believes has something to do with Jerusalem. She makes a lot of dramatic pauses, just so you know, and this is all coming from Gene Ho at George News. So this is a very subjective, reality fluid part of Trutherville.
Because Herod, Illinois is right there.
All right, now that Gene Ho's saying it, can we now say that we're Israel? Can we now say that? I've been saying it. My video, I said we had a Galilee, we had a Israel, we had a Bethlehem, we had a Nazareth, we had a Lebanon, we've got an Egypt. Egyptian artifacts, hieroglyphs have been found in the Grand Canyon. Come on, guys, come on. All the places these people could go, but they come to America. Why? They could have went to Russia, China, South America, Iceland, Greenland, Antarctica, Australia. They could have went anywhere. Anywhere. Why the United States? Because we are one nation under God. We are the Holy Land.
That's the basic premise of it. America is the Holy Land. Lean Dion says, I've seen this lady. She is so truthy. Very truthy. And you know what's fascinating is there's like a style. And I always tune this out. I was very averse to it. YouTube, you would have someone sitting in front of the camera and they're talking very calmly or not, but they're in front of the camera and they're conveying something. Maybe they share their screen. But with TikTok, it becomes people who are talking in short bursts, wagging their fingers, making these expressions on their faces, a lot of dramatic pauses. It's very dramatic. It's like a bunch, and maybe it's higher quality, I don't know, but it's a style. And they sound very excited. They're really good at pitching this information. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying it kind of evolved. And a lot of them are just regurgitating stuff. So the quality of information may not be too good, but their presentations are pretty good. Let's go ahead and listen to some more of this. America is the Holy Land.
We are. And guess who's coming back? Guess what nation is going to have a judgment on them? We are.
All right, so we're going to be judged very soon. And I guess that happens next month. G33 says, Tim, you would kill it on TikTok. Yeah, I just got to work on my facial expressions. Like the raised eyebrow, the pointing, the waggy finger pointing above my head, and then it matches up with whatever I'm covering up. That's what annoys me. They're pointing at some document. Look at this document that we just found. It's like you're wagging your finger in front of it, and you're floating around. You're kind of bouncing around a bit. It's kind of hard to watch you. G33 says, wear a mask. No, I don't need to wear a mask. I mean, I'm not trying to hide my identity or anything like that. And, I do have an issue with people who are anonymous. That's one of the reasons why I've been calling out these prophets. Salty says, you got the eyebrows down, Tim. LOL. Yeah, well, that City council video has been hit more than 1 million times. That's in the last few months. That's probably it. But yeah, TikTok, I don't know if it reaches the audience that we're intending to reach, but who knows? Maybe I'll give it a shot. No, actually, I did. I got banned. I got banned right away now that I think about it. I just don't feel like I'm TikTokable. Here, let's move on. G33 says, we've never seen your face. Actually, a lot of us have met. 2017, 2016, 17, we were meeting in person. In fact, we kind of started this thing of organizing the cutting fringe. Before the Flat Earth conferences, we were already gathering auto hoaxers and NASA critics. And we continued this, and I was doing video daily. The only reason I stopped doing video is MGTV, as in Goldfinch, was claiming to be me. So he could take video of me, re-upload it in his own context, and then I would have mine taken down. So I'm like, well, I actually can't. I mean, I could, but that's why I stopped. And now that I think about it, it's kind of interesting. It's like, yeah, I stopped doing that. And the reason why I was doing it is a short 10-minute video does bring in subs every day. Like, I do know how to grow a channel, and it is kind of, I think, maybe counterproductive to not make full use of video in today's attention economy. And I have The Office, which is a lot to look at here. I actually thought I would start it this week. I was actually thinking about this today. I was like, you know what? Maybe I need to start that on my live video channel for YouTube. Start that process of integrating video in and eventually perhaps breaking into TikTok. Oswaldo says, don't TikTokify the IPS, bro. Well, another part of the TikTok video is to bring people into the live stream. So I could say something provocative about what we're discussing that day and then bring people into the live stream, quite possibly. That was the plan. And then we had, let's see, recently, I think the most recent thing with video would be that documentary from Scandinavia, which hasn't been released yet. And that video is guaranteed. It's a documentary on conspiracy theorists, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to be designed to make me look crazy. Like they're going to Mark Sargentify me. They're going to try to make me look like some kind of internet radicalized wingnut, some kind of fringy type, eccentric perhaps. Armin Ree says, yes, absolutely. Yes, I got your email. In fact, I'm going to be opening up Discord in the mornings again. I was on Discord last night and some of the evenings as well. So if you're not in Discord, we are going to be popping in chat and we will be recording stuff, by the way. Let's listen again to this truther about America being, was it Israel? I thought it was Babylon.
It's here. This is what it is. And then I'm also going to blow your mind with this, right? 2017 eclipse come through then, right? 2024, how many years is that in between? 7. All right. We don't do dates. That's not what we do.
Now, I heard this back in 2017. I had some truth to tell me on 9/23/2017, the world ends. And I'm like, well, give me your car. I could use your life savings. You're not going to need it. You're getting raptured. He didn't believe it that much. He's like, oh, by the way, God's going to clean house. He's going to rapture us. World's going to end. Mark your calendar. Oh, you're not going to need your car then. I'm not going. But suddenly he's not so sure. But he said the tribulation, this person I'm speaking of said that the tribulation begins 9/23/2017. So we're at the end of the tribulation according to this. So how'd you like the tribulation?
But we go off events or markers. So 11/11, mirror it, is 5/11. What's 5/11? May 11th, right? But okay, we're not going to do that date. We're just going to go 5/11 though, right? So you add 5 plus 1 plus 1 is 7. 7-year tribulation.
That's geometric calculation right there. That's every number is every other number because you can just add it to another number till it is. Lean Dion says, I like her resting, blown mind expression. See, that's what I don't have. I don't have a blown mind expression. I'm too deadpan, generally to convey anything with any level of seriousness. Like, oh, this is very important. This is critical. I don't know if I could do that. Plus, it's not. This is all hype. Yes, says Waldo, give me your car. You're getting raptured, bro. That's exactly what I was suggesting. You ought to just give me whatever you have, your material possessions, because you're going to be uploaded. You're getting uploaded to heaven. Congratulations. You're one of the 144K. I didn't make it. Consolation prize. I'm going to hell. Can I at least have your ride? And the answer is no. I'm like, okay. I thought that those who truly believed were very, charitable as well. Give it all away. But nope. It shows you like where people put their money or how they deal with their property, where they really are with their beliefs. Like all those people who talk about climate change and the ocean levels rising, who also have beachfront property. Like you're not so worried about that. And I don't know this, but I mean, if anybody here, if you have a beachfront property, do you have to pay insurance for global warming for the floodwaters? Do you have some kind of insurance plan for when, not if, for when the waters go up and then it floods us because of our overconsumption of fossil fuels? Gematria 101 does not agree that this person is a legitimate Gematrianator. Let's continue.
We are done. It's going to be 1,000 years peace.
1,000 years peace begins on 4/8/2024. We're done with the tribulation. 1,000 years of peace begins, which I take to mean that we all live to be 1,000. And I don't think she means digitally uploading our consciousness via Elon Musk's Neuralink and then living for 1,000 years in some kind of sim. She means something else.
Trump said it. This is not another 4-year election. I'm telling you guys. God is around here moving, working, helping.
Trump didn't mean another 4-year election. He meant 1,000 years. TYT Prytac says, when is the play going to end, or is this until we die? Same stupid S since I was young enough not to care. What I've discerned, having examined this problem, is that just as they want to tell you the world is small and finite, they also want to tell you that time is finite, that we are in the end times. The most, I would say the most fervent end times believers don't even believe in God. They believe that Gaia or some asteroid is coming, but they don't believe in the biblical sense, but they do believe we're in the end times, and that's a scientific belief. And I say science with capital S, scientism. My point being, this is a system of control that keeps you in a state of insecurity and malleability by always making you think that it's all about to end. And that's the ruse, but it never ends. Every end is a new beginning, a new iteration, and they recycle their news quite a lot. So once you can grasp that it doesn't end, then you can realize that, okay, this up and down is actually part of what you would call, I think, a trauma bond with the mass media. Good times, bad times, good times, bad times. And the good times, the entertainment, the fun stuff is meant to cover up all the bad stuff. So you kind of forget about it after a while. And then they bring back the bad stuff. But this intermittent high and low, fear, terrorism slash trivial, nothing means anything. This back and forth locks people in. And I think the 24-hour news cycle is something that's also part of this thing where if you don't suspend judgment, like you watch something on the news tonight, do you believe it's true? Well, maybe you don't have enough information. So the default is, yeah, I'm just going to assume it's true. But that locks you into this 24-hour cycle where you think you're obligated to believe the daily news, and you're not. You can wait 2 days. Like, I'm not going to look at the news on Monday until Wednesday and then decide if I think it's real or not based on evidence that comes out. You don't have to rush to judgment. And once you disengage from that rush to judgment, you unplug from their, what I call their news cycle of abuse. So it's all a game. Lickety Split says, boiling vinegar got me through the tribulation. Yep, that's how you get your blue skies back, according to a very well-known photographer, a very well-known content creator. that you can boil vinegar and it will clear the skies. Lean Dion says hashtag 1,000-year presidency. Diana Southheart says when her false eschatology fails, you'll see her bent over, wasted, and defecated in the street. I don't know. Maybe. I kind of think that if it doesn't come true, they'll just push the date back. Like, I see a lot of these Trumpers now putting their hope in Barron Trump. Like, when he grows up, he's going to be the one to save us. So this could go on indefinitely. That's what's sick about it.
Listening. Keep praying. Keep your faith. Faith of a mustard seed.
This pause. She pauses, shakes her head. This is like what Katie Britt did. This is TikTok stuff. And it is really, from an acting standpoint, I think she's conveying that she does believe this very well. But here she is again, keep praying. Now, who do you pray to? JFK? Donald Trump? JFK Jr.? Who gets prayed to? I'm not quite sure.
Working. Helping. Listening. Keep praying.
Yeah, pray to the mustard seed.
Keep your faith. Faith of a mustard seed. We're learning new things every day, guys. But it's for the best. And watch out, Mandela effects have been happening.
That's what I was waiting for. After this pep talk about how the world's going to end, we're going to have our 1,000 years of peace starting on the 8th of next month. Mandela effects are happening. She had to throw this in. Let me play that again.
But it's for the best. And watch out, Mandela effects have been happening. What we once thought was is going to be no more.
All right. There you go. Really positive take on this end of the world prophecy. But when she went right into the Mandela effect. I'm like, okay, why couldn't you have started with that? You're Mandoozled. Trump-doozled, Mandoozled, hitting the Q pipe, drinking the Kool-Aid, high on hopium, and it looks like she's having more than just nothing burgers. But anyway, we'll check back with her on the 9th and see if Diana Southheart is right. All right, moving on. And look, let me point out one more thing. I'd mentioned how, yeah, the woke are depressed and sad and they hate life, and the red pill community are living a nightmare. But these QAnoners aren't living the nightmare. When I first came across this 2017, the person who told me the world was ending on 9/23/2017, he said, "You got to stop with the conspiracy. It's very negative. It makes it seem like there's bad guys in control." And I'm like, "Well, what do you propose?" And this person says, "Prospiracy. Talk about the good stuff, the hope, the white hats behind the scenes that are going to save us all." He even then said to me, "You no longer need to do this. You can stay behind the scenes and just let the white hats take control. You don't have to put yourself out there. It's very courageous of you." It was a strange conversation, and there were lots of them. In 2017, before Q came out, there were a lot of operatives on YouTube, in the chat rooms, in Google Hangouts, that were all saying the same thing. There's a prospiracy that we can pay attention to that's hopeful. No more negativity, and the white hats will save us. I was hearing about white hats before the Q movement started. And so it didn't just emerge from a vacuum. They built this up. And it all has, from the very beginning, tied into this eclipse. That's what's interesting about it. It's tied into this eclipse, 9/23/2017, this tribulation narrative, and right now we're seeing the culmination of it. Salty Siren says, "Faith of the piston popcorn seed." Oh yeah, they're always about the popcorn. "Trust the plan, bro," says Oswaldo. Yeah. Well, this is very much a prophecy cult. That's really all it is. Rambo tweeted, "Scroll on Twitter for 5 minutes and you'll see 100 tweets about satanic pedos. How is this good for anybody's mind? Anybody else feeling mentally drained after a few minutes on social media? Not me. They don't get my loosh. I don't believe this stuff is real, so it's not disheartening. I know it's a lie, and we've already uncovered this lie. Save the children, 2015. Sorry, those children are now voting Democrat because you didn't save them on time." Just another one of these things where it's demoralization. They want you to think that there are satanic pedos everywhere and they rule you. and you can do nothing about it. That's what they want you to think. And I'm pointing out that if you feel drained, it's because they got your soul. They hooked you in. I laugh at this stuff. I mock the people in this alternate reality all the time. Like, in no way is this depressing for me. Although, when I first read David Icke's book called Children of the Matrix, and it opens up about children being eaten by reptilians during satanic rituals, that did darken my worldview for quite some time. And I didn't find it unbelievable. The way they tell these stories, they sell you on these bad guys and how terrible they are, and it helps make everything believable. Like, of course they're doing this and that because they're so terrible. All fear mongering. Red pills contain a dose of fear. Oh, you're not scared? You're comfortable? You're blissful? Here, have some of this. Here's a dose of fear. Something else to fear. Something else to fear. And not only do they give you these little superstitions, but the way the echo chamber is designed, it gives you feedback to tell you these are real. And they create these debates. Like, for example, I think this debate over contrail, chemtrail could have been laid to rest 20 years ago. But they don't want it to rest. They want this debate. They need the contention. They need your reality to be augmented. And what I've been calling reality augmentations might be better described as hyperstitions. We live in a hyperstitious world. Lean Dion says the Q Trooper stuff is the world's biggest interactive movie playing out. Yeah, it truly is. Tominoid3 says Westworld 2016 for the white black hat programming. Interesting. I heard the 33-degree Masons wear white hats. Okay, moving on. So King Charles is not dead. And Kate Middleton is not dead. And Taylor Swift is, as far as I know, not missing. Speaking of David Icke, he says, if this guy in the black bobby hat was any more stupid, his body would forget to breathe. This is the new media, the MAM, mainstream alternative media, and it's painful to watch. These mates put on their stupendous ignorance on public display while claiming to be informed. Let me play a clip here of David Icke. Well, actually, this is a David Icke criticism of Tim Pool.
You know, the PNAC group. Those guys were Americans, but they basically did all that for Israel. So
I think Australia is roping us into this war with China.
Okay,
why are we sending in ships and personnel to Australia?
So what is Icke so triggered about here? I think this is a deliberate tactic. And the tactic is there needs to be, within the truther community, there needs to be a group of people who call out the mainstream truthers. So you have mainstream and then not mainstream truthers. And they're creating this division now, leading it with David Icke. And I think the reason why is to drown out what we're doing. Unified Trutherville no longer exists. They're creating this schism in it. And it's not working. I don't see it working. It really is too uniform because it's based on worldview, not who you're following. And the worldview of the truther, of course, is MSM+. But I'm finding this to be interesting how there seems to be this attempt to split the alternative media into the real alternative media and the controlled opposition ones. And of course, this move to split the thing is being led by David Icke, who you could argue he's not controlled opposition. Maybe he doesn't know. However, he, in print, in his publishing, in all of his talks, and his worldview contains the idea that all of the fake school shootings are real. All the terror attacks are real. All the fake death tolls are real. So he's an auto believer. Okay, let's see what else we have here. This is a guy with a Let's Go Brandon hoodie on. I'm going to play this clip for a second. The caption says, "The Anon struggle is real."
January, and then it's Christmas in July, and then today's not really today because the numbers are missing, and then it's because it's the Julian calendar, and then it's the Gregorian.
Okay, this is good. This is why I stopped this one. I bookmarked this one. This individual is annoyed at all the different predictions about when the Great Awakening is happening, when the storm happens. And a lot of the people make predictions. They'll say, It's happening on 4/8, but this 4/8, according to the Gregorian calendar, is actually 3/27, and on and on. So they're always right because they can just switch the calendar or switch the calculator. So this guy, Let's Go Brandon, obviously a true believer and into this stuff, is a little fed up with his own side.
Calendar, and then it's the Q calendar, and then it's the Mickey Mouse clock, and then it's the mirror inside the Mickey Mouse clock, and then it's the mirror beyond the other Mickey Mouse clock that's in the other mirror that's in the other dimension beyond the ice wall, and then Pompeo's got the timestamps, and Scavino's got the comms, and the comms are in the burgers, and now they're in the ice cream, and the timestamps are in the comms, and Grassley's got the comms, and the comms are in the corn, and now the corn is up his ass, and Durham's got the...
This man is responding to an active measure. That is the term. The Trutherville, that's what I call them, this segment of the media ecosystem has been targeted. So I'm pointing out these prophets, these Mendoozled, Chemdoozled, Gematria calculator prophets. I'm pointing them out because I think they are disinformation, knowingly or not. I think they are there to muddy the waters, to create chaos, confusion, and to destroy objective reality. Let's play some more because this individual here has had enough of it.
The briefcase, and Trump has the football, and Barron Trump's really 85 years old, and Putin's got the codes, and he sends the codes to Elon, who has the magic Starlink, and then the cabal is going to try to resurrect hell from the portal of CERN. Then the Nephilim are going to come down, fight alongside the Blackhawks with large Hadron colliders, and the Earth's going to flip over on it.
Okay, he's not done yet, but this is some inspiration for TikTok. Is this how I TikTok? No, this guy's also being, well, I mean, you could say he's being facetious and he's joking, but everything he is saying is exactly what is being spread around. Even with the Nephilim and the Blackhawks and the blue avian aliens from the Galactic Federation fighting against the Reptoids and China, it's all there.
On its head, we'll be walking upside down. And then Trump's going to step in, and Elon's going to reset the codes, and Trump steps in, and then it's all finished in one day. Maybe! Maybe!
All right. He can no longer handle nothing but nothing burgers. He needs something. Somebody give him something substantive. There's nothing there. And he's fed up. And he bought the t-shirt, Let's Go Brandon. He bought it. He thought that this was something. And let's continue here. There's only 15 more seconds.
Maybe!
Okay. He dumped a bottle of water on his own head. Yeah, pretty good. All right, moving on here. Let's see here. There's so much going on in Trutherville. It's a mess. That's why we left. Are they using the event to conceal what's really going on? Weird stuff for the solar eclipse.
Today was released in an Oklahoma newspaper saying
This has been the story anyway. The eclipse is going to bring about some kind of calamity, blackouts, internet goes down, sky falls, earthquakes. I've heard earthquakes. Don in Southheart says, Let's Go Brandon freed from his straitjacket. Just seconds before filming, he has to vent or explode like a heating up popcorn in the microwave. Well, I was wondering when this would happen. You know, at some point, people got to get mad, but when you study cult psychology, and that's what we're looking at here, mass psychology, groupthink, mob psychology, but in cults in particular, especially doomsday cults, prophecies that don't come true have the effect of solidifying the faith of the faithful. And then those who walk away from it are looked at as people with little faith. Oh, you're leaving too soon. And it creates a more intense version of the original cult because now you have the true believers. And the true believers believe harder. And all these believers existing in an echo chamber provide feedback for one another, which allows hyperstitions to exist, to become created. This is Mandela effects are hyperstitions. You know, it doesn't exist. And a lot of these things, what I call hyperstitions, what I'm referring to, are superstitions that have evidence. But the evidence they cite isn't actually evidence of the superstition, but it's what they accept as evidence of superstition. For example, a UFO cults everywhere. Well, these UFO cults are built on people looking at weather balloons and airplanes and drawing erroneous conclusions. But these erroneous conclusions are shared with other people who have also arrived at erroneous conclusions, and now they're all wrong together. And since they're all wrong together, they're all on the same sheet, they all believe now it's real. And if it wasn't real, why would it be constantly talked about in the movies? Why would there be government departments dealing with this? Why all the secrecy? So it becomes very interactive. And I think what they have done intentionally is created a mythology. Like, the UFO thing, this is a good example. There's a documentary you can watch for free on YouTube called Mirage Men, and it actually takes place behind me here at the Air Force Base, where an individual lived nearby and he noticed various craft that he couldn't identify, and he started writing about it online in his conspiracy forums. Well, then he meets some people who tell him that they know some stuff about what he's been seeing, and they feed him some secret documents about aliens from Venus coming down to Earth to take our water. This kind of spiraled out of control. This individual started these UFO conferences, then you had people talking about abductions and probings, where all of a sudden a guy is given misinformation because the people who were giving him this information were from the Air Force Base. They were special agents. So Air Force special agents were bullshitting a conspiracy theorist, feeding him lies so he could build a community around it. And this whole community now is completely distracted from any kind of damage they could do by reporting on top secret craft, because now they're talking about aliens from Venus. Now, the interesting thing about this is when he started having all these conferences, people would show up and they would say, I've had this experience too. And all these various people adding to the story affirmed everyone else's account. Nobody questioned anybody else. And you see this with the Mandela effect. They don't question each other's Mandela effects. They question mine because they think I'm making them up, but they don't question each other's. Well, this UFO cult thing grew and grew, and the person who was, behind it was told at some point by one of these special agents, hey, none of this is true. We're messing with your head. He didn't want to believe it. He died not confronting the fact that he had been duped and used. Cheesy Cool says, Tim, how come I don't have a wrench anymore? The only channel that has wrenches are the official channels. The IPS official channel is Infinite Plane Society and Infinite Plane Radio. I don't have access to the other channels. So if you want to go to the main one, it's ips.monster, and I have it linked, and it's in the newsletter. But the official channel, which is monetized, you can become a member for $1. And if I do start making TikToks, I'm going to put them on the main channel first. Salty Siren says Mirage Men was a great watch. I think it's a must-see. It's a must-see if you want to understand how the conspiracy realm is awash with government agents. We say shills, and some people say, are shills real? Are they not real? It's not a debate. The entire thing is led by the government. The PSYOP entertainment complex controls alternative media. All right, let's move on. Commenter says Europe will fold like a cheap tent. Now is the time. Nothing ends, and everything's inflatable and fake. I mean, look, how many times do you have to see inflatable tanks, inflatable airplanes, wooden rocket launchers, dummy missiles, hyper-realistic simulation training dolls that bleed and breathe, hyper-realistic simulated events presented on the news as real? Like, at some point you have to realize that there is no bad news, that the world is not coming to an end. But the inflatable stuff, the decoys, that's standard operating procedure. It's a mind war. That's the hardest thing to wrap one's head around, that it's all in your head, and you can't see it until you step outside of the box. I've been looking at this symbol, it's a reoccurring prop that I've seen. So I look at Hunger Games, where the elite sit around a round table with a dome over it, and this table is like a holographic projection of the world. Westworld, similarly, has Westworld as like a game board, and the controllers, the programmers, are all on the outside of it looking in. I remember seeing this on Clash of the Titans. The gods are sitting around a game board where they have little ivory figurines of the people on the world stage, the world that they're actually manipulating, the situations they're creating. Now, I think this is a metaphor for how the world stage is. The world stage is the propaganda box that everybody's in. And the controllers, the programmers, simply have to throw in an element, just like in Hunger Games. Throw in fire. Well, they do it here. Fire NATOs. Throw in a bowl cut shooter over here. Throw in falling planes here. So they throw into the system, which has been already saturated with whatever they're throwing in through predictive programming. It's in the entertainment. So it's already there in the ecosystem, in the echo chamber. The scenarios that they are going to artificially inject into the world, things that will become hyperstitions, things that will become real by default belief, these things are thrown in there from the outside and they become real. We manifest them. And not all of it's innocuous. I mean, think about how they hype up certain types of violence, let's say subway violence. Well, that does have a real effect. That is definitely affecting the people targeted by that agitprop. You could argue that the media makes people bigoted, racist, hateful in all kinds of ways. All right, moving on. Tia Gloria, and I follow her on Twitter even though she's a T-vestigator. She has some pretty good memes. This one, sometimes it's not the people who change, it's the masks that fall off. We've been talking a lot about masks, and this is something I wanted to get to because we spent a lot of time on this, like in 2020, 2021. This person is that person. This person could be that person. Is Chris Farley playing Robert Ford, for example? Is Rush Limbaugh Jim Morrison? We have all these things, and is Alex Jones, Bill Hicks, and I don't spend a lot of time on them because they don't add very much to the conversation other than fakeability. And we have to be informed about fakeability, about the techniques. What does Big Brother have in his special effects department? But the mask thing is real. It's admittedly real. It has been declassified. So there's not any doubt that you do have hyper-realistic masks that are in fact foolproof. But can you have two people side by side and discern from that this person is that person, Bill Hicks, Alex Jones? And you can see the narrative that may support it, so it makes it very interesting. But I would argue that no, you have to go off video in addition to photos. You have to look at every available piece of information, every bit of footage, before you could make the claim that you know. And the reason why I'm saying this is that there's this phenomenon that occurs when you have two faces side by side and you're told it's the same person. It's like animation. You're reading a comic book, sequential art. Your mind will connect these things because they're part of a sequence, and your imagination will fill in for what occurs between frame 1 and frame 2. So it's like, oh, is this person that person? It's very easy to imagine it so when they're put there side by side, accompanied by a little bit of gaslighting, getting you to question your reality. So I don't think that the side by side is a good methodology, but I'm comparing it to the Mandela effect, where it's always a binary and they show you something and have you compare it to a recollection, and that has you create a false memory that weighs against the real thing. Anyway, it's just an approach, and I never really found it very satisfying, and it's a distraction for people to be. I mean, I think it's lazy to say, oh, this person's a clone. Hillary Clinton's a clone. Oh, yeah, Kate Middleton's been dead for 5 years, but she's a clone. Like, what's your basis for saying this stuff? Lean Dion says, crazy Ryan Garcia is now talking about the domed flat earth. Okay, first he was talking about mass rapes at Bohemian Grove. Then he went into he knows who killed Tupac. And now he's flat earth. This is how they promote fights these days. This is the attention economy. And if you want to promote a fight, you want to be talked about. And if you can't be talked about for something positive, it's very easy to get talked about for something negative. I would not have known who he was or cared about his fight if he hadn't come out and said these outrageous things. Does he believe them? Is he really crazy? Or is he faking crazy? And one more point. I've noticed that the MMA types and the boxers who get into this, they always talk about it in the Christian biblical sense. So Satanists run the world, and the flat earth is a dome because the Bible. Uh, the other fighter, I believe his name is it Bryce? The other fighter, who's a flat earther, had come out saying something similar. It's just a reoccurring theme here with these fighters, and I think it's interesting because they go with the good versus evil, the Satanism, and the good guys. Whereas the football players who have been talking about the flat earth are coming at it as agnostics. Like, what do we know? Who do we trust? Do I have to believe? You had this recent NFL draftee who said he didn't believe in space. He said Tyler Owen said he doesn't believe in space. So he's not saying, I believe in a dome. I believe the world is a disc under a dome and God's sitting on top of it. No, he's not saying, I believe I know this. He's saying, I don't believe. And that's where we're at. Non-belief. I'm a non-believer in news. I'm a non-believer in any of their BS. I prefer to know what's knowable, what I can claim to know. Lickety Split says flat earth is coming back. Well, the question is valid. The flat earth model doesn't exist any more than the ball earth model exists. But the debate is pointless as the glurfs, those who defend the globe, they don't know that mass media has a special effects department and that they augment our reality. They don't understand the hyperstitional nature of the world stage. They're in the box. So you can't argue with somebody in the box. I mean, it's a paradigm thing. It's like a religion. You could be an atheist with a very good understanding of the origin of some cult who believes in some god, that maybe like the flying spaghetti monster, for example. So all these people believe in this thing and they're in their bunker. You go in there and you have evidence it doesn't exist. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to sink in. Your information is outside of their closed system. Just like 3% of the scientists don't believe in climate change. Well, erase what they had to say. Just delete them. They don't count. We have a closed system where we already agreed. So 97% of us agree. That's a consensus. Let's ignore those fringies. Similarly, the box of the MSM doesn't take in information from backstage, behind the scenes, stuff about crisis actors, stuff about special effects, stuff about how the space program is all really just about controlling inner space, your mind space. Always has been. Okay, let's continue here. Michael Lett says, if Trump goes down in April, the economic crash will follow shortly thereafter. And bloodbath is a noun, which means a major economic disaster. So here's an example of gematria in practice. He has calculated that in the Chaldean and the cipher X, bloodbath and economic both add up to the same numbers. Economic and bloodbath. Not economy, but economic. You see how subjective this is? You could find any word, plug it in, until it matches with the Chaldean calculator, which always strikes me as weird. Are we talking about some ancient numerology system to make sense out of modern day news? I mean, it's kind of a reach here. But this person here is saying, a financial tsunami is coming. How will you prepare? Gematria, economic crash, financial crash. Doomsayers. Again, if nothing happens on 4/8, I will be blocking all of these individuals after analyzing their work. For this time, I've come to conclude that what we're really looking at more than anything is a fallacious way of arriving at wrong answers. Let's see what we have here. Oswaldo became a member, Blue Wrench Lodge. Appreciate that very much. This think tank is never going to stop. We have a mission, and the more of you who join, whether it's Patreon, InfinitePlaneSociety.com, or here at YouTube, the more it enables me to put all my time and attention into this. I'm not as divided as I used to be, and I am freeing up some time. I've built up an eBay store, which covers a lot of what we would be earning a lot more had we not been demonetized. So it's kind of a big deal that we are monetized now, because that is what sustained this channel for the first year. In other words, this as a business model is actually viable. And the more time I put in, the more it does actually pay off. And it is a model that can scale up and grow. But we had to get over that hump of getting approved. And maybe suing them had something to do with it. I don't know. We're 2 months out from my lawsuit versus Google/YouTube. I'll be out in Redwood City, California in mid-May. Yes, the IPS is suing Google. Mind Control Central. They've made some efforts, a few motions here and there. We don't know where it's going, but the fact of it is, the best they can possibly hope for is to change the venues on me and delay this thing by a few more months. But they can't ignore the fact, because they've all admitted to it, their attorneys in our conversations, they've admitted to the fact that a crime has been committed against the IPS. We're talking about fraud, identity theft, fourth-degree felonious identity theft committed with the unwitting aid of YouTube's own legal department. So there's not a dispute that a crime was committed used to suppress this channel. And the facts of the case are very interesting when it turns out, you find out that the person behind this actually works with the Trump administration. So we have some enemies that are very wealthy and politically connected who weren't anticipating that they would ever be doxxed, by the way. But anyway, that's going to come to a conclusion here this year. Absolutely. We are closing in on this. All right, let's see what we have here. This is the 36-story Saturn V rocket with astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins blasted off on July 16, 1969 from Launch Pad 39A. Michael Letts has calculated that 19,900 days from the blast off to the eclipse. This is another example of what I'm talking about with these prophets. They're taking events and calculating the dates between that event and the eclipse and drawing these correlations. Now, the problem with this again is that they're not accounting for every miss. So there've been 1,000 launches since, but you're going to focus on this one that has this specific number. Now, does the number 19990 mean anything? That hasn't even been established. So what's happening here, and this is why they call it the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, is they're shooting at a barn, the side of a barn, just haphazardly. Then after they fired all the shots, they draw the target. They find a close grouping and they draw a target and they point and they say, look at me, I'm a sharpshooter. I never miss. I'm always right. But again, it's kind of a trick. It's a Jedi mind trick. And I hope they figure it out. The ones who aren't intentionally doing it, I hope they figure it out. Unlike that one individual who spent 4 years doing gematria on baseball games, who's finally giving it up because God told him to. All right, moving on. Vladimir Putin has won the presidential election in Russia, winning 87% of the vote, securing his position in power till 2030 and beyond. We've been talking about the Bloodbath prophecies for 4/8. Kate Middleton and King Charles's deaths, which were both, of course, not deaths. We are also kind of breaking down the dynamics within Trutherville, what's causing it to break down, how it's been targeted by what I consider to be active measures, meant to erode its capacity to discern real from fake. Now, I was looking at this true believer in space, Dave Willis, and he says, what's all this criticism of Boeing about their planes? Because look at their spaceflight stuff. And he's showing how Boeing in space is really just killing it, that they have all the best tech out there, and there's no issues out there with DEI. But they're showing this picture of Starliner, some kind of a capsule floating above the Earth, and talking about this thing. And I asked one of them, "What movie is this from?" Because it looks like a movie prop. It doesn't look real. It literally looks like a science fiction movie. And Dave Willis says, "This is from real life when Starliner visited the ISS." So I'm looking at this image closely, and this is, of course, supposed to be in outer space. And the people who believe this stuff don't even question it. But I was looking at the Earth below, and I'm still not certain that NASA has quit this technique of creating the ball Earth by recording the sky and then inverting the video. And you can do this yourself. Record the sky, lay on the ground, record the sky, invert your camera. And if you don't get any background from the trees or buildings, you just get the sky and the clouds, you can kind of create what looks to be the Earth as supposedly seen from a couple hundred miles above. And we actually have an example. I have a video I could show of a space shuttle dropping its fuel tank. But when you look at the fuel tank carefully, you realize it's not falling to the Earth. It's a blimp, and it's floating into the clouds. And that beyond the clouds, that sky, is being presented as the ocean. Optical illusions. But anyway, I would never debate the nature of the world with someone who thinks this is real, because this person has accepted the authority of the screen. To them, this is scientific evidence. And I don't think that it is. In fact, I was looking at this concept of admissibility as evidence in the court of law when it comes to video or photography. And you could argue that this is not evidence unless you have something else to substantiate it. You would need who recorded it, when. You can't just take an image out of context and say it's real. You can, but you risk reality impairment, which is where most people are right now. They are reality impaired. They cannot tell the difference between real and fake. But there's no point in debating them, obviously. So, Fight the Flat Earth, who's a major league glurf, has been gloating for days about this latest Starship trip, which looks very cartoony. And he's mocking flat earthers as a bunch of crybabies crying, shedding tears because they've had their hopes and dreams destroyed. So I took his cartoon image of crying flat earthers, and I asked him to, basically explain, is this real or fake? I said, I don't think this is an actual photo, but it looks so real it must be fake. Which is what Musk said after Starman went into space or fake space. But look at this picture. You would say, obviously that's CGI. Obviously that's AI generated art. It's not real. But qualitatively, it's actually no faker than what SpaceX just showed us. It's no different. So whenever somebody shows you something from space, like, oh, look, starships in space, you can ask them, what movie is this from? You don't have to assume it to be real. Cole Anchor says, if you can't debate the people who are brainwashed, what can you do? Here's what you can do. Here's what we're doing. I'm saying just go past Normieville, skip Woketown, and we're going to blow up Trutherville first. The whole point of this think tank is let's aggregate the people who've already unbrainwashed themselves. It has to be done at the level of the individual. You can't pull people out of their matrix pods. They have to do it themselves. But it turns out that there are a lot of us. There are a lot of people who have figured out the level of skepticism required to maintain sanity in the insane world. But there's no platform for sane people. You got to hang out with the woke who are depressed and angry, or the red pill who are having nightmares, or they're high on hopium, or you can go hang out with the sleepers in the middle. But there's no platform for sane people who aren't apathetic. You see, the people in the middle, they believe everything, but they're apathetic about it. That's why you can't relate to them. They believe the world's going to end. They believe that babies are having their heads chopped off over there. They believe all the mass shootings, but they don't care. So it's hard to relate to that kind of apathy. But what we have here is completely different. We have an informed demographic of media skeptics who aren't falling for any of this stuff, who suspend judgment so we're not caught up in the 24/7 news cycles. We're constantly being flooded with stuff to just accept as real, which we don't. The objective here is we send out a signal, a penguin projected onto the ionosphere, or a book tour, and this signal will help us. This mission is to aggregate everybody who's already stepped out of the box, who is on the right side of the screen. And I believe that there are enough of us that we have this sizable breakaway, what I call the parallel media. And once we aggregate a good 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10,000, it'll snowball. And people who are near the fringes, who are being gate kept, will eventually see through that, in my opinion. Now, once we have that established, then we can decide what to do next. But you're not going to make any progress fighting an info war, because the info war is two-sided and it's actually designed to never end. The only way to win is to step off their stage. Conscientious objection. We're a bunch of peaceniks here, inactivists. But this platform is growing. I mean, this think tank has been going on since 2017 despite the best efforts of the powers that be to shut it down. I mean, personal stalkers, unfair business practices, harassment, all the stuff they've done has only made us better at what we do, less censorable. We've evolved. But I feel like there's a vacuum because objectivism, the philosophy of objectivism, and even some areas of atheism where people are thinking deeply about how they can claim to know something and have these knowledge claims. And do they just say, my mind's inadequate to know, so I'm just going to go with what the guy in the costume says, the guy in the smock, the guy in the clergy garments. No, there's principled objection to various belief systems that are being pro-offered by religions and governments. But the people who would be objectors to these don't have any sort of platform, because if you look at it, anybody who's leaned towards atheism, and I'm not saying that I advocate atheism or I'm in denial of spirituality, but I'm saying the people who even go that way have a reason for it, because their critical thinking is being challenged by these authorities. So they want to challenge it back. However, the whole school of atheist thought has been pulled into scientism. So they've lost the plot. They didn't arrive at any higher insights at all. They've just been given a replacement religion and a new God construct to replace the old one. No different. So it doesn't go to any kind of higher sense of awareness. In fact, it puts them back in the dark age. They're on the same sheet as the religious that they criticize. But then the objectivists, for example, they believe that there's too much collectivism, not enough focus on individualism, individual perception, cognition, epistemology, and the philosophies of the world have been inadequate to handle the task of man reaching his highest capacity as an intellectual. And the problem with objectivism is they took the televised worldview as objective. So the objectivists are all cheering for Apollo 11, and they're treating everything in the news as absolutely real. Well, I'm sorry, but the instant you step through that screen, you have become a subjectivist. Just as the instant you pick up a holy book and you accept it as automatically real, whatever you read in there, yeah, you've become an auto-believer, you've become a subjectivist. You've lost, or you've given up your claim to existing in an entirely objective reality. So these groups, this is a large segment of the population is underserved. There's a vacuum. Where do the thinkers go in a world of believers? Where do the seekers go? And this is what I'm saying, is that there isn't a place. They are being gate kept, and those who go too far are maligned, attacked, ignored, etc. So this is why we are doing our own thing. And when we have the numbers, this is what the plan is. It's not about me. I'm one person, but the demographic I'm talking about is huge, and there are many content creators there. So we get all these content creators on the same sheet with their audiences, and it becomes a little more powerful. I think a little more unignorable. And then we can set about the next stage, the next process. But again, I break the world down into the off-world stage and the world stage. The world stage is the mainstream, the alternative, which consists of course, Normieville, Trutherville, and Woketown. And we have no business messing with Woketown because they're married to big government. They're the most brainwashed of all. We're not trying to wake up Normieville because they don't want to wake up. They're too apathetic. The only people worth reaching out to, in my opinion, are those in Trutherville. And a lot of them are exasperated, like that individual I played a few minutes ago who was ranting. They're tired of the active measures, of the irrelevance, of the false prophets. And so those who want an objective perspective of the world without their intelligence being insulted by psyops and crisis actors and fake news will finally have a platform here very soon. Yeah, if you want to call in, phones are open, 505-349-0420. I didn't have anything particular on the agenda to discuss today other than the bloodbaths. We're having a bloodbath of bloodbaths. Infinite Plane Radio.
Yellow.
Hey, is this Cole?
Yeah, what's up? Is this Tim?
Yeah, thank you for calling. What is on your mind? You said you have a few interesting things.
Yeah. So, I've been digging into this kind of, this rabbit hole of stuff, and there's a rapper called Dr. Creep who predicted the COVID-19 or whatever. He predicted the pandemic in one of his audios.
Okay, I saw you had mentioned Dr. Creep, and I looked him up. I wasn't sure what exactly he had done. So you said that he had predicted that there would be the 2020 thing.
Yeah, so it's not even like a prediction. So it's a video. Look up if you can real quick. It's called Pandemic. It was made in 2013. He talks about vaccines being like a hoax, like a scare. And one of the lines is COVID-19 mixed with 2020. And I guess it just got swept under the rug because no one heard about it.
Okay, I see it here, and I will put a link.
Yeah.
I'll put a link to it in the chat so people can check it out. But I have found Dr. Creep.
Breaking Benjamin.
Very interesting.
And yeah, and it's just
If you're a
like
pet
a
owner,
whole rabbit
these
hole. So his name is based off a radio guy, like a radio talk show host, who also, push towards our same agenda. Like, you guys are just lying, and we know exactly who you are. This guy, he was super funny. He dressed up as like a clown. But yeah, it's just, there's a whole rabbit hole. He had a talk show in like the 1990s or something.
Okay, I'm looking at that video, and in the comments section, a number of people are pointing out that this song predicted COVID-19. Fascinating.
Yeah. One of the lines is literally COVID-19 mixed with 2020, and so I've been listening to this music. So I guess this is what true underground hip hop is, like what people would call it. But all the videos, all like the other videos he has, only have like 100 to 200 views. They're good. They're very good songs, and they all talk about literally what we talk about. Just one New World Order. I'm sure you heard of the Garden plot. Right, the Garden plot.
Remind me, what is that exactly?
So I don't know. The Garden plot is just one of like the many things involving the New World Order. But yeah, I think you could like just look into that type of stuff. There's also something else, Amenhotep Productions, Amenhotep. I can give you links to this type of stuff later if you want.
Okay, I found that one. So the Department of Defense Civil Disturbance Plan, or Garden Plot. Army National Guard plan to respond to major domestic civil disturbances in the United States. Okay. Now, where was the Garden Plot in 2020 when BLM was engaging in peaceful protests?
Yeah, I guess it just wasn't there, but there's just one of his songs from like earlier on. It was just diving in. He also has a song about Project Bluebeam, and it doesn't have that much views, so I guess that hasn't got released yet. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like these people, if you look at the post about it, like he answers questions from people like, how did you find this out? Like, are you time traveler or whatever? And his answers are literally, no, you just have to look through media or something. Like he said something about, I just made it with connections and scrolling through media, quote unquote. You can't do this shit through scrolling through hours on Google. You have to like make connections and stuff.
Interesting. See, that's what we do here.
And then,
We're reading
yeah,
the
this guy was
zeitgeist.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy. This guy's from 2013, and all of this stuff just got pushed under the carpet. It's like it's not even like about the agenda or whatever. The music is great. All of the music revolving around that type of stuff is great, and it just has no views or anything.
Fascinating. Yeah, I'm looking at the comments. People are pretty blown away by this. So I will be putting this in the newsletter for people to check it out. And using predictive programming as a predictive model is what we do here because we're recognizing that that's
Yeah,
part of
yeah. That's what I originally wanted to say. That's what he said he did. Just predictive programming. Literally, COVID-19 mix of 2020 in a song from 2013, and I think it's just something interesting to look at.
good find, good find. And we're always looking at artists, musicians, and movies. I mean, sometimes I don't even use the term predictive. Sometimes it's concurrent programming, like it's real time. Like next month, Fallout.
Yeah.
I think Fallout from Amazon's coming out. So we have all this talk about nukes. Well, now we're getting a mass education into what Fallout is. Nobody knew about pandemics to the extent that they did until 2019 when Netflix started putting out like documentaries on it, etc. They flood the zone. And we are being prepared for fallout. So everybody's going to get educated on nuclear biological decontamination processes for fallout from high altitude detonations. Coming soon.
So what you're saying right now is they're preparing us for a nuclear thing or like
Yes.
another pandemic.
Oh no, no. They're definitely they did the pandemic to teach us how to lock down, to train us, but the next I think the next thing that's going to be used as an excuse for a lockdown is going to be fallout. And it'll be much harder to resist lockdowns for that. But it's the same procedures. It's just a different contaminant. But fallout is also invisible, and it's there if they say it's there. So it's a very similar dynamic.
Okay, so they're just going to use nukes as a way, to keep us in.
Exactly. Exactly. And they could say, because of the weather, because of the winds, because of the climate, this section of America is going to be hit with this much radiation, so don't leave your house. Like that's kind of where it would be similar. It'd be an excuse for
That's
lockdowns.
so that yeah, yeah.
In fact, in
That
2019,
makes
there's a movie called The Humanity Bureau with Nicolas Cage, and it's about everybody
mhm.
locked down because there was a nuclear war and you can't leave because of radiation. And you find out at the end of the movie that they lied and that everybody was locked down for no reason. Kind of funny.
Oh, that's so funny. Who was it produced by? Like this?
It's Nicolas Cage's. It's called The Humanity Bureau, and it came out in 2017. Dystopian thriller. Let me see who directed it. Interesting movie though. It's actually pretty decent. But yeah, near
Yeah, I'd
future,
imagine some.
lockdown for no reason, and it was by Mind's Eye Entertainment.
Yeah, that's so funny, dude. But yeah, I'd imagine that's just some sort of predictive programming,
Yep.
like most of it. It's kind of like I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of just scary being in this different, like being outside of the bubble, cause like being like my age, it's just like I go to school with these kids, and they're all just like sitting there, you know, just buying into it. And I have talks and stuff. I go to parties and stuff, but it's just hard to have like a conversation about it. Because as soon as I bring it up, I'm just like, hey, by the way, have you checked this up? And then they're just like, yeah, that's a coincidence. Or are you crazy or something? Like, no, the vaccines are real or whatever. Like,
Their
nukes are
programming
real, space
is,
is real.
yeah, it's like you risk being alienated. And then the way the media has contaminated the area, oh, if you ask these questions, now you are possibly a Nazi, possibly a racist. So they can cause you to lose all your friends, lose your social status. They make it very painful to even have these
Well, it's
concepts and
not
ideas.
even like it's not even that. Like I'm a cool guy and stuff. It's just like it's just like they're helpless. Like it's over. You know,
They're in,
like
yeah,
not
it,
a
it's
yeah, yeah.
a
It's just
box.
hard to see.
It's hard to see, literally. They're in a box, as in they've accepted the screen as an authority, so that's their frame of reference. And your frame of reference includes the possibility that the screen is lying, whether it's telling you a lie or if it's selectively presenting a view that excludes stuff that you ought to know. So, in other words, when you stepped away from the screen as an objective source, as an authority, you actually stepped out of their box. And you can't see when you're in the box. You can't see what it looks like as such. You don't see the model that you're in. And I've dealt with this for a long
Yeah,
time, and
that's like the it's like the saying. It's harder. I think it's like it was about fooling someone. It's like it's harder to unfool someone than it is to fool someone.
oh yeah, definitely. It's
Yeah.
easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled. And that's because their emotions and their ego get tied into it. And of course, consensus, the power of the consensus to hold reality down is also what you're fighting up against.
So have you done any like digging into who's in control, like who like the main source of all of this is, like which rich families or whatever?
I find that a lot of the people who point at rich families or certain nations or ethnicities, they fall short of the bigger truths because those explanations presuppose that everything is real. So all I can tell is that whoever is behind it, it's not one nation. In other words, government is already global. We say governments, we
Yeah,
say
yeah, it's
nations, but it's
definitely not like one. It's not like a country, but like I'm talking about like just all. I found a pretty good documentary or two. Just it connects like everything, like everything with Bush, everything with 9/11, everything with just selective programming or whatever. It just predicts all of it. It's like a pretty old video. It even connects like biblical characters from Christian, like the book Bible or whatever, the Bible, and even the Jew Bible or whatever, the Jewish Bible. But yeah, it's a documentary connecting those two true Egyptian like findings.
send it my way.
And
We can say for sure, whoever's
yeah,
in control of it
yes,
now,
100%.
like let's say whoever's at the capstone level of this thing, they didn't make it. The people who are in control inherited this thing.
Yeah,
They
they
were
didn't make it now. Like even the video I watched says no, it just goes back to history. Like they just been this ring, the ring of power. The documentary is literally called the Ring of
okay.
Power. This
Well,
ring of power has been going back for years.
one thing
But
I focus on.
I don't 100%.
Well,
Yeah.
it may lead you somewhere though, because I don't think you can assess this stuff without looking at the past. Because, like, I look at the symbolism of the space program, and the point of it is like we're looking at ancient symbolism dressed up with science fiction terminology. So you have an obelisk updated as a rocket. So I look back, well, what were these ancient worldviews about? Who was this? And you trace it back, and all the mystery schools go back, Egypt or whatever, and you're like, well, whatever it is, this control system is ancient, but it's being updated. And it's not new. They didn't just take over the media. The media is replacing religion. And the same people who created the religions to control everyone's minds are in control of media. So there's a lineage here, and I find that to be
This
interesting.
will be our one world religion. We will look up to them. And I don't know what happened in the past, and I don't know what they're up to now, but what I think is going to happen is it's just going to get to the point. They're going to strip our guns away. They're going to strip our jobs away. They're going to strip most of our rights away. And this will just be everywhere, not just the United States. This will just be everywhere. And after they do that, we're just going to, be working for them the whole time. Like I was listening to one of your podcasts earlier. We're just going to be little Oompa Loompas, as you called it,
Yeah, Oompa Loompas with Emperor Pope Elon in his Mars base,
Yep.
and neo-feudalism. And I think that is the objective here. But it's not like they're going to have to force everybody physically because they are using mind war to mentally condition people to becoming this future model citizen. And what typifies the
Yeah.
model citizen is they believe whatever's on the screen. It's like saying Bible believers. But instead of the state religion having a Bible, the state religion is media and they're TV believers. And the TV believers
100%.
are a docile, conquered group of people.
Docile, sit there, just believe whatever they see.
Yep.
They'll see a certain person saying what they like. Oh, that's my hero. I don't know. I'm not going to look into what they actually did or who they are, but that's who I like. Let me see some more suggested videos, Then that's just what it's going to go to. And it's they already won. That's kind of how it is with like I grow up with these people. I'm 17 years old. That's how it is.
Interesting. Interesting. I was I remember specifically when I was about to be 18, I was like thinking about joining the army and stuff. But I remember at that point recognizing the difference between my line of thinking and the people who don't question. For me, it was mostly religion. I didn't even start questioning media till much later. But there's a lot of similarities, and it has to do with the authority and the individual becoming part of a collective of believers. So their individual doubts
Yeah.
no
So
longer matter.
like we were talking about in that comment, I went through all of those stages. So I started off as a kid, like I was growing up in churches and all this stuff. I started off by being an atheist. That was like my first stage of, getting into the truth. So I was an atheist. I started questioning religion. So then growing up, I went into Trutherville, whatever you like to call it. I was listening to Joe Rogan podcast and all these like shitty, fake scary stories, paranormal stories made by like, media propaganda people. So I was in that stage, and then eventually, I saw that video. That's honestly what started this whole thing, that pandemic video. So I saw that video like a month or two ago, and I looked into it, and I was like, oh, wow. And then I looked into all the music, and it was talking about the deep state, and everything was connected. So I looked up the deep state, and then I ended up finding your channel somehow. Then I just started listening in, tuning in. And that's how, that's where I am right now. I've been looking to just digging. I've just been digging and digging. I found great documentaries connecting everything. Just videos from like years ago, like centuries ago, more than 10 years ago. Just, reliable shit.
Right, right. Well, I definitely.
Also, I'm sorry for my language.
No, no, no. Actually, I appreciate your call. A lot of people here are really happy about this call. We always get these first-time callers, and it's interesting to hear people who are relatively new to this field of thought and inquiry. And to me, this is just where you go if you're really thinking deeply about things, and we share information. And it's not really about
Well,
agreeing.
yeah, it's kind of the crazy part. I'm not that intelligent of a guy. I just I literally just saw this, and it was just like, no, that's not a coincidence. And everyone in the comments is saying, this guy's a time traveler. How about you just look into it? It isn't that hard. 10 minutes of your time. Oh, there you go.
I can
Okay.
see how it could happen. If you're an artist, you're a writer, and you're drawing your inspiration from the world around you, I can see how you might arrive at these things in advance. And we have a lot of musicians and artists associated with this channel who are, similarly uh, putting these ideas into their music. Because most music, I would say, reinforces the dominant paradigm in all of the daily news. It's like the news in audio format as music. It's all reinforcement. So it's interesting to hear true counterculture and figure out where they arrived at their conclusions. I'll check out this Dr. Creep.
So the cool part is I think I have a pretty good idea from where it arrived at. It's a guy his name is Gil something. He made a movement. The revolution will not be televised. That was his movement. It went on for more than 40 years. No one ever heard about it. And he also he basically was one of the main, big starters of hip hop. And that's where a lot of hip hop and rap music derives from today.
Interesting.
Yeah, he played piano, he did jazz, he did other forms of jazz which turned into hip hop. But yeah, I can link that. I'll link the Dr. Creep video or whatever.
Yeah, by all means. You can post links here, or you can go into the Discord or the Gilded and post links there. That's all we do. We post links, we discuss, and we kind of it's not really an echo chamber. It's a platform for ideas that are outside of the mainstream echo chamber. But we always appreciate new people, new perspectives, and everything you said here.
100%. How can I get into the Discord?
Just go to the main site, ips.monster, and there's a button right there.
Okay, that's cool. All right.
Well, hey, I appreciate you calling in. I appreciate your commentary and your insights and your perspective, and I'm glad that you have this ability to think for yourself and recognize that others may not be on the same sheet, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it used to be frustrating.
I'm honestly, I'm just glad you made this platform for people like me. So, so we're not just crazy.
Yeah, it used to be frustrating for me because I didn't want to be the person at the party that was only interested in talking about the Skull and Bones Society and, taking the evening into a different area. But there has never been a platform that wasn't controlled and steering you back into mainstream politics and questionable news sources. So yes, this platform is the point of this whole think tank is this: we're platforming these other perspectives that include fakery. We don't have to agree with a consensus, and I have no interest in gaining consensus agreement. Anyway, thank you very much for the call, and call back anytime.
Yeah, of course. You have a great night.
All right, everyone, that is Cole. You saw him in the chats there, Kole. I think there's a second name on there. First time caller. I think this is second time this week we've had in the last week that we've had first time callers. Some of them are lurkers, years and years. Cole Anchor, appreciate that. And then others are relatively new. Interesting too to hear that you're only a few months into this divergent thought and you're already finding value in this, because a lot of people are turned off of what they call conspiracy theory, or they're fitting in. And these ideas don't mean you have to not fit in. Like, I don't think you have to be alienated because you're a thinker. I just simply understand people's frames of reference. In fact, the liberals use this term now, positionality, where you have to consider where somebody's coming from when you analyze their information. And there is some truth to that, because the MSM mind sees things a certain way, and you're not going to be able to communicate certain ideas because they won't be taken the same way. And when you understand where they're coming from, you can speak to that. And this is why I'm saying I'm ignoring Trutherville as far as its orthodoxies and its attachment to the mainstream. I'm only interested in certain people who've seen beyond it. I'm not interested in the normies, and I'm not trying to hold a sign on the same side of the road. The news is fake, wake up. To me, that is wasted. It makes you look crazy. And look, they look crazy. You're like, oh, they're crazy, apathetic, and brainwashed. Well, they look at you and they're like, this guy's crazy. He is brainwashed in his own way. So it's a mutual thing. Like, the definition of a cult is the church down the street from yours. Isabel N says newer souls have less karma of the BS system. Well, here's something else too. The truth of the matter is very simple. The mass mediation gives you a worldview, and it doesn't match reality 100%. And those areas where it doesn't match, those augmentations, those hyperstitions, are things that you might want to analyze, because maybe you've accepted some false premise here or there. Maybe it's darkened your worldview unnecessarily. But I'm not saying to be on our level, you have to know that 9/11 wasn't what they said, or you have to recognize that these things didn't happen. I don't think you need a list of things that you don't believe in to fit in with us. Rather, it's accepting the premise that we need to be skeptical today of all times, because we are, of course, faced with a ubiquitous worldview shaping mechanism which has supplanted religion. And if you're not skeptical, you're going to go into their box. And I can't go back into the box because I'm not apathetic. I wasn't apathetic, so I went into Trutherville. And I was comfortable there. I thought, this is my people. But then eventually I realized this is not only entirely compromised, but it's being sucked into the GOP. It's just part of the Republican Party, more or less. And then, especially last year, I started really doing a deep dive into wokeism, because nobody knew what woke meant. And they'd say woke, oh, that's woke, cancel culture and all this stuff. They're throwing these terms around, but what does woke really mean? And the more I analyzed woke, I realized wokeism is a mirror of trutherism. And both wokeism and trutherism are where you go if you don't fall for the mainstream news. The default position: you lean left, you go woke; you lean right, you go Trutherville. But there was never a position for people who don't go into the political horseshoe. All right, so we have been covering a lot of interesting ground here. And again, the Discord is available at ips.monster. Same thing with Gilded. And if you post links there, they will be analyzed, looked at, and if you comment on any of the platforms, I tend to notice, and I copy and paste it into my minds.com. So if you follow me at minds.com/Infinite Plane Society, you can pretty much see everything that we're talking about, all of the links. I screen cap people's comments from Discord. I always try to attribute the comments to the commenters because we're building a network here. It's not about aggregating answers and monopolizing it, which a lot of big Twitter channels are just taking factoids out of context and sharing them without attributing it to the source. Well, I think we have to include every source. That's how you build a network. So if somebody has something to say, it's about acknowledging where it came from. Not just to give them credit necessarily, but because someone else might want to continue that conversation with them. And a lot of us here know each other, maybe not directly, but you talk to people hours and hours and hours over several years, you get to know a lot of people. And our think tank is really unparalleled. I don't think there are other think tanks, there are other groups of people like this, few and far between, but ours is going to be the one, I think, to unify this parallel media infrastructure and to make this the basis for what I think a platform for skeptics, true media skeptics, but also just free thinkers in general. Baking Brad says, Tim, you heard of Walter Bosley? You discovered him on the Higher Side Chats. No, I'll check it out. I like Higher Side Chats. He does a lot of really great interviews. Walter Bosley. Again, post links if it's something you want me to consider. I'll check out Mr. Creep. Predictive programming is so fascinating to me, and artists sometimes get it right just because they're reading the zeitgeist. They're not all plugged into the metascript. They're not all part of it necessarily. The big ones obviously are. But the idea of reading the predictive programming to gauge what is coming is possible because predictive programming is how they repeat messaging before they introduce it in the fake news. Okay, we'll be live tomorrow, likely earlier, and I'll be more active in the Discord. So if you go into the Discord server, check the voice chat. I'm going to try to be there more often. We've been getting into some interesting conversations lately, and that was something of a hub before. And I'm going to try to recreate that because we get a lot of people who can't call in but who will join in these group chats. The title of today's live stream, The Bloodbath of Fake Bloodbaths, shows you again how this hyperstitional reality works. It's a closed system. The elite are on the outside, just like on Game of Thrones. They're looking at our model, and they throw stuff in there. And once they know that the idea is contained in enough minds, they projected it onto the collective psyche. Everybody is seeing this. Everybody's seeing mushroom clouds in recent years. Everybody's been inundated with these concepts. Then they throw it in to the news cycle, give you some false witnesses, some CGI, and it becomes real. And then we alter our lives accordingly. This is Chief Crow Auto Hoax, or GTFO. Thanks for joining. Thanks, callers, and thanks, chat. We'll see you all tomorrow, if not this evening.